David Alakicha stood by the window of his penthouse. The city lights of Lagos spread out below him like scattered jewels, bright and very far away. He held a heavy glass, swirling the dark whiskey inside. He watched the tiny cars moving on the streets below, their headlights like fireflies in the distance. He was the CEO of Quick Serve Logistics, a big delivery company, one of the biggest in West Africa. His name was on buildings, on vans, in the newspapers. He had everything people thought meant happiness. This huge apartment high above the noise and dust, filled with expensive art he barely looked at. Fast cars in the garage that a driver usually drove for him. Tailored suits that cost more than some people earned in a whole year. But inside, David felt empty, like a room with all the furniture taken out. He felt tired, a deep kind of tired that 8 hours of sleep on 1,000-count sheets didn't fix. And mostly he felt lonely. He was 35. It felt older. 5 years ago, his father, the founder of Quick Serve, had died suddenly from a heart attack. David, barely 30, had stepped into his father's huge shoes. He'd felt the pressure to prove himself, to show everyone he wasn't just the lucky son. He worked relentlessly, pushing the company forward, embracing new technology, expanding into new markets. He'd succeeded. Quick Serve was bigger, richer, more efficient than ever. The board members clapped him on the back. The business magazines wrote glowing articles. But the success felt cold, hollow. The people in his life, they felt hollow too. Business associates were friendly only when they wanted something. Social acquaintances talked about deals and status. And women. He sighed remembering Lara, the beautiful lawyer he'd dated for 6 months last year. He'd hoped it might be real, until he overheard her on the phone with a friend, laughing about how dating the Quick Serve CEO was great for her career profile and how she was calculating the potential settlement if things got serious. He ended it the next day. Since then, he hadn't even tried. The smiles felt fake. The interest felt like a transaction. They saw the CEO, the money, the power. They didn't see David, the man who sometimes just wanted to watch a football match with a beer and talk about nothing important. He looked at his reflection in the dark window. A handsome face stared back, the lines of stress around his eyes barely visible in the dim light. He wore an expensive silk shirt, open at the collar. He looked like the picture of success, but his eyes looked sad, lost. He took a sip of the whiskey. It burned, but it didn't warm the coldness inside him. He was tired of the endless meetings where people agreed with him too quickly, tired of the fake compliments, tired of the fancy parties where the laughter sounded brittle and the conversations were all about who knew whom. His life felt like a beautiful cage, gilded with gold, but still a cage. He rattled the bars sometimes, but he couldn't get out. He wanted out. He wanted something real, someone real. An idea, a seed planted weeks ago during a frustrating meeting about depot inefficiencies, started to sprout, growing bolder in the lonely silence of the penthouse. What if he could just disappear? Shed the skin of David Alakia like a snake shedding its skin? Become someone else? Someone ordinary? Someone without a famous name? Without a trust fund? Without the weight of expectation? Someone poor. He thought again about Quick Serve. Thousands of employees, the drivers navigating the impossible Lagos traffic in the company vans, the warehouse workers lifting heavy boxes in the sweltering heat, their blue uniforms stained with sweat, the dispatchers juggling calls, routes, and angry customers. They were the engine of his company. They lived real lives, faced real struggles. They wouldn't know his face from Adam. He rarely visited the depots. His father used to walk the floors, but David managed through reports, data, distance. He was just a name on their pay slips, the invisible big boss far away in his glass tower. Could he actually do it? Create a fake identity? Get hired at the lowest level? Feel the sweat drip down his back? Hear the real complaints? The real jokes? See the company from the bottom up? And maybe, just maybe, in that rough, real world, he could find her. A woman who was kind, genuine, hardworking. A woman who wouldn't know he was rich, who would see Daniel the worker, and maybe, just maybe, like him for who he was pretending to be, which somehow felt more real than who he actually was. The risks were enormous. If the press got wind of it, disaster. The board would have his head. His security detail, led by the ever-watchful Mr. Jones, would confine him to the penthouse. It was reckless. It was irresponsible. It was probably insane. But the pull was irresistible. It wasn't just a desperate romantic quest anymore. It felt necessary, a way to reconnect with his own life, his own company, a way to escape the suffocating isolation, a way to feel something real again. Even if it was just the ache of tired muscles. He made up his mind. He finished the whiskey in one decisive gulp. The burn felt good this time. He would do it. He would become Daniel Adebayo. He would trade the penthouse for a shared room, the tailored suit for a worn t-shirt. He would go undercover in his own life. His first step, the most crucial one, was to bring Michael Ease into the secret. Michael had been his father's right-hand man, the head of quick-serve security for 30 years before retiring. He was fiercely loyal, discreet as a priest, and lived quietly now on a comfortable pension in a small house outside Lagos. David trusted Michael implicitly, more than anyone else in the world. He drove himself out to Michael's place the next Saturday, ditching his usual driver. Michael was surprised and pleased to see him, ushering him into his simple, comfortable living room, offering him cool water. "David, my boy, what brings you all the way out here? Everything all right?" Michael asked, his experienced eyes scanning David's face, noticing the weariness. David took a deep breath and explained his plan, laying out his feelings of emptiness, his desire for authenticity, his crazy idea of going undercover. Michael listened patiently, his expression growing increasingly concerned, then alarmed. When David finished, Michael sat back, shaking his head slowly. "David, David," he sighed, his voice heavy with worry. "This is madness, complete madness. It is too dangerous. Lagos is not a playground. What if someone recognizes you, despite the disguise? What if you get robbed, hurt? What about your responsibilities as CEO? Think about the company, your father's legacy." "Michael, I have thought about all that," David said quietly, leaning forward. "Believe me, I know the risks, but I need to do this. I feel like I'm suffocating, Michael. This life, it's not living, it's just existing inside a bubble. I need to find something real. I need to understand the people who work for me, the reality they face every day. How can I lead them if I don't understand them? Please, Michael, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. I need your help, your expertise, your discretion." David saw the internal struggle on the older man's face. Michael had always been protective, first of David's father, now of him. He knew Michael saw the loneliness in his eyes, the desperation beneath the calm exterior. Finally, with another deep sigh, Michael nodded slowly. "Okay, David, okay. Against my better judgment. If you are truly set on this foolishness, I will help you. But you must promise me you will be careful, extremely careful. One mistake, and everything could go wrong." Relief washed over David, so strong it almost made him dizzy. "Thank you, Michael, I promise. I'll be careful. Thank you." Over the next week, they worked meticulously, secretly. Michael was a master of his old craft. He created a rock-solid identity for Daniel Adebayo, complete with a believable backstory from Ibadan, laminated ID cards that looked genuine, and even old, slightly worn school certificates Michael somehow procured. He found a small, bare room for rent in a crowded tenement building in Mushin, a place where neighbors minded their own business. He bought a cheap, unregistered phone and SIM card, the kind used by millions in the city. He gave David a crash course in blending in street awareness. David, meanwhile, focused on his transformation. The beard grew, rough and unfamiliar on his face. The cheap haircut felt strange. He bought clothes from Okrika Market, jeans already faded, t-shirts thin from washing, sturdy boots that pinched his feet. He practiced speaking differently, roughening his voice, using more common slang he picked up listening to people in Mushin. He forced himself to slouch, to avoid making direct eye contact with strangers, to look less confident, more uncertain. He ate cheap street food, roasted plantain, akara, getting used to the taste, the grit. When he looked in the small, cracked mirror nailed to the wall of his Mushin room, the transformation felt complete. He saw Daniel Adebayo staring back. A young man with tired shoulders, rough hands, and eyes that held a mixture of apprehension and fragile hope. He looked like he belonged there. He took a deep breath, tucked his fake ID into his worn wallet, and headed out to catch the Danfo bus towards the quick-serve depot. The real journey was beginning. The quick-serve personnel office was even worse up close. Hot, airless, smelling of dust and stale sweat. The queue moved slowly. Daniel stood patiently, trying to look like just another hopeful applicant, ignoring the butterflies in his stomach. When he finally reached the desk, Mrs. Oho, the personnel clerk, barely looked up from her papers. Her face was set in lines of permanent boredom. She took his fabricated documents, glanced at them with practiced speed. "Delivery assistant?" Her voice was flat, uninterested. "Hard work, you know. Lifting, carrying, all day. Sun, rain, long hours. Shift work. Pay is small. You sure you want this kind of work?" "Yes, ma'am," Daniel said, keeping his voice steady, adding the right amount of hopeful humility he'd practiced with Michael. "I need the work very much. I'm strong. I'm ready to work hard, ma'am." Mrs. Oho grunted, unimpressed. Maybe she heard the same thing 50 times a day. She stamped his form with a heavy thud that echoed in the small room. "Okay, go find Mr. Adekunle, warehouse C supervisor. Just ask for Mr. Aid. He will interview you. See if you are suitable." She waved him towards a door at the back without looking up again. Daniel murmured his thanks and pushed through the door, stepping into the overwhelming noise and activity of Warehouse C. The place was vast, a metal cavern filled with towering shelves piled high with packages of every size and shape. Forklifts beeped and whizzed past, carrying pallets. Conveyor belts rumbled overhead. Men in blue quick-serve uniforms shouted instructions, their voices echoing in the huge space. The air was thick with dust and the smell of cardboard and diesel. He asked a passing worker for Mr. Aid and was pointed towards a short, stout man standing near loading bay 7, yelling furiously at a young man who had dropped a box. Mr. Aid radiated anger like heat from a furnace. His face was flushed, his eyes narrowed into slits. Daniel approached him cautiously. "Excuse me, sir. Mrs. Oho sent me. I'm Daniel Adebayo, applying for delivery assistant." Mr. Aid spun around, his glare landing on Daniel like a physical blow. He looked Daniel up and down, from his rough haircut to his worn boots, his expression filled with contempt. "You? Adebayo? You look soft, like you came from your mother's kitchen. You think this is play work? This is hard labor, boy. Lifting heavy cartons, loading trucks under the hot sun, moving fast. Can your small body handle it? Or will you run away crying after 1 hour?" Daniel clenched his fists behind his back, forcing himself to remain humble. "I can handle it, sir. I am stronger than I look. I need this job." Everybody needs job. Talk is cheap," Mr. Aid sneered. "Okay, we will see if your body agrees with your mouth. Be here tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock sharp, not 1 minute past 6, understand? You will work here, Bay 7, sorting and loading. Johnson will show you what to do. Don't be slow, don't make mistakes, don't break anything, and most importantly, stay out of my way." He jabbed a thick finger towards Daniel, then turned his back, already bellowing at Johnson again. Daniel retreated, his ears ringing from the shouting. He had passed the second hurdle. He was hired provisionally. Tomorrow the real test would begin. The work sounded grueling. Mr. Aid was clearly a tyrant, and the environment was harsh. It was a world away from his air-conditioned office, his comfortable life. It was exactly what he'd asked for. He felt a strange mix of dread and anticipation. The next morning, Daniel arrived at 5:45 a.m., his cheap phone alarm having woken him in the dark. The warehouse was already a hive of activity. Johnson, the wiry man Mr. Aid had been yelling at yesterday, showed Daniel the ropes with minimal conversation. Scan the barcode, check the destination, put the box on the right belt or trolley. Lift properly, move fast, don't block the aisle. The instructions were simple, the execution brutal. It was the hardest physical work David had ever imagined. Lifting heavy boxes, awkward shapes over and over, bending, twisting, reaching. His muscles, used to tailored suits and gym machines, screamed in protest within the first hour. Sweat soaked his thin t-shirt, plastered it to his back. Dust filled his nostrils. The noise was constant, grating, and Mr. Aid was everywhere, his voice a constant critical roar. Adebayo, faster! That box is not heavy! Adebayo, did you check the code? Are you blind? Adebayo, stop standing there like statue. Move! 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 By lunchtime, David felt like he had been beaten with sticks. Every muscle ached. His hands were raw, blisters already forming on his palms. He stumbled toward the staff canteen, following the stream of other workers. The noise and smell hit him like a wave. He got a plate of plain rice with a thin stew, found an empty spot at a long plastic table, and forced himself to eat, needing the fuel. The other workers around him ate quickly, talking in low, tired voices, mostly ignoring him. He was the new guy, the outsider. He caught snippets of their conversations, worries about money, sick children, unfair shift changes, the latest football scores. Real life, raw and unfiltered. He survived the first day somehow, and the next, and the one after that. His body slowly, painfully, started to adapt. The blisters turned to calluses. The aches became a dull, constant background noise. He learned the rhythm of the work, how to pace himself, how to lift smarter, how to anticipate Mr. Aid's movements, and try to be busy whenever the supervisor came near. He learned to keep his head down, his mouth shut, his opinions to himself. He was Daniel Adebayo, just another struggling worker trying to earn his daily bread. He also started to really see his company from the inside. He saw the dedication of men like Johnson, working incredibly hard for low pay. He saw the camaraderie that existed beneath the surface, the small acts of kindness workers showed each other when the supervisors weren't looking. But he also saw the deep flaws, the constantly breaking scanners that wasted precious time, the dangerous way heavy items were sometimes stacked, the lack of clean drinking water in some sections, the fear and resentment inspired by managers like Mr. Aid, which led to mistakes and low morale. He filled mental notebooks with observations, feeling a growing sense of responsibility and shame. It was near the end of his second week, during another exhausting lunch break, that he properly met Funke. He'd seen her before, the neat young woman from dispatch, always focused on her paperwork. Today she was sitting alone again, and the seat opposite her was free. He hesitated. She seemed professional. Maybe she wouldn't want to be bothered by a rough warehouse worker. But he was tired of feeling isolated. He walked over. "Excuse me," he said, trying to sound polite despite his fatigue. "Is anyone sitting here?" She looked up and her smile was instant and warm, transforming her serious face. "No, please sit down. It's hard to find a space today." He slid onto the bench opposite her, placing his tray down. He felt grubby and awkward next to her neat appearance. "Thanks, I'm Daniel, from Warehouse C." Her eyes twinkled with friendly amusement. "Ah yes, Daniel. I think Mr. Aid has mentioned you." She lowered her voice playfully. "Something about being slower than a pregnant snail?" "Don't worry," she added quickly, seeing his slight flush. "He says that about all the new people. It's his way of welcoming them. I'm Funke, from dispatch." Her easy manner put him at ease. They started talking. Funke described the controlled chaos of her job, trying to route dozens of drivers efficiently through the Legos gridlock, dealing with customer complaints, deciphering handwritten notes, battling the unreliable computer system. She spoke with intelligence and a quiet passion for solving problems, but also with a hint of weary frustration about the lack of support. Daniel listened intently, asking simple questions, careful not to reveal his own deep understanding of the logistics involved. He talked a little about his life, the move from Ibadan, the search for work, the difficulty of adjusting to Lagos. He found himself drawn to her honesty, her resilience, her gentle humor. She didn't seem to care that he was just a warehouse laborer. She talked to him as an equal, a fellow quick-serve employee navigating the daily grind. Their 30-minute break flew by. Funke gathered her ever-present dockets. "Well, Daniel the snail," she teased gently, "time to get back to work. Try not to give Mr. Aid a heart attack today." "I'll try my best, Funke." Daniel smiled back, a genuine smile this time. Talking to her had been like a breath of fresh air. He felt lighter, less alone. As he walked back to the demanding world of Bay 7, he knew his undercover mission had just become infinitely more complicated and infinitely more important. He had found someone real. Now he had to protect that reality and her from the lie he was living. Daniel began to live for lunchtime. The 30 minutes he might get to spend talking with Funke became the anchor of his long, grueling days. He learned her usual spot in the canteen and made sure to be there, even if it meant rushing his work or skipping a water break. Seeing her smile, hearing her calm voice amidst the chaos, made the aching muscles and Mr. Aid's insults almost bearable. Their conversations deepened, slowly, cautiously. Funke, sensing perhaps his loneliness or his quiet intelligence, started sharing more about her own life. She told him about her younger siblings, Bola, the serious one, studying for exams, Tunde, the mischievous one, always getting into scrapes, and little Aisha, who missed Funke terribly. She showed Daniel pictures on her old phone, her face softening with love and worry. Sending money home each month was a constant pressure. Sometimes, Daniel, she confessed one day, stirring her stew listlessly, I feel like I am working just to stand still. The school fees go up. The price of food goes up. It is never enough. Daniel listened, his heart aching for her struggles he could solve with a flick of his pen in his other life. He wanted to offer help, real help, but how could Daniel Adebayo, the poor warehouse worker, do that? He could only offer sympathy, encouragement, a listening ear. You are doing amazing things, Funke, he said sincerely. Your family must be very proud of you. You are strong. She gave him a small, grateful smile. Thank you, Daniel. It helps to talk about it sometimes. He, in turn, had to constantly maintain his facade. He invented more details about his fictional life in Ibadan. A sick mother, a convenient excuse for needing money, a younger brother who was supposedly apprenticing as a mechanic, vague stories about past jobs that didn't quite add up if examined too closely. The lies felt increasingly heavy, especially when Funke looked at him with her clear, honest eyes. He was growing to care for her deeply, admiring her resilience, her kindness, her unwavering integrity in a workplace that often seemed to lack it. Lying to her felt like a betrayal of everything he admired. He lived in constant fear of exposure. What if Funke asked a question he couldn't answer plausibly? What if she noticed the expensive watch-tan line on his wrist that refused to fade completely? What if Mr. Hassan did another walkthrough and looked closer this time? What if a former colleague or acquaintance happened to be visiting the depot? One afternoon, while they were talking near the dispatch counter, Funke was searching for a specific delivery record on the computer. The system was slow, glitchy as usual. Ugh, this system, she sighed in frustration. It's always freezing. I wish they would just invest in a proper upgrade. They spent over 50 million naira upgrading this system just 2 years ago. Daniel blurted out before he could stop himself, recalling the budget meeting where he'd approved the expenditure. Funke turned to him, surprised. 50 million? How would you know that, Daniel? He froze, realizing his massive blunder. Think fast. Oh, he stammered, trying to laugh it off. I think I read it somewhere. Maybe in one of those free newspapers they give out. Or maybe I heard some managers talking. You know how rumors fly around this place. He quickly changed the subject, asking her about a difficult customer she'd mentioned earlier. Funke let it go, but he saw the thoughtful, slightly puzzled look linger in her eyes. He cursed himself inwardly. He was getting careless, too comfortable in his role, too eager to connect with her on an intellectual level. He had to remember, he was Daniel, the simple worker. Still, he couldn't stop himself from wanting to help her. He saw how Mr. Aid often overloaded her with extra tasks, how other departments sometimes failed to provide the information she needed, making her job harder. He couldn't intervene as the CEO, but he found subtle ways. He started accidentally leaving correctly formatted reports near her desk when he knew she was struggling to compile data. He used his knowledge of the warehouse layout to quietly give tips to the drivers Funke dispatched, helping them avoid delays she might get blamed for. He overheard Mr. Aid making a sexist remark about Funke to another supervisor, and made sure an anonymous complaint reached the HR department via the suggestion box. Knowing it would likely be ignored, but feeling he had to do something, his undercover work continued to give him invaluable insights. He saw the disconnect between the company's stated values, posted on glossy posters near the entrance, and the daily reality for many workers. He saw the potential being wasted due to poor training and lack of motivation. He saw the need for better communication, better equipment, better middle management. His list of planned reforms grew longer each day, but the longer he stayed as Daniel, the more attached he became to this life, to Funke, and the harder it seemed to imagine going back to being just David Alakia, the isolated CEO. Funke, meanwhile, seemed to accept Daniel as a fixture in her workday, a quiet, reliable friend. Their lunchtime conversations became the highlight of both their days. She started sharing small jokes, asking his opinion on things, treating him as a confidant. One day, she brought him a small container of homemade stew from her neighbor. "My neighbor made too much yesterday," she said casually, avoiding his eyes. "Thought you might like some. Better than the canteen food." Daniel was deeply touched by the simple gesture. It felt more meaningful than any expensive gift he had ever received. "Thank you, Funke," he said, his voice thick with emotion. That's really kind of you." But her growing trust also increased his guilt. He was deceiving her every minute they spent together. One afternoon, as they walked out of the depot gate together at the end of a long shift, Funke looked at him seriously. "Daniel," she said hesitantly, "you know you could do better than this place. You're smart. Have you thought about maybe taking some evening classes? Improving your skills?" He wanted to tell her he had multiple degrees, that he ran the whole company. Instead, he just shrugged. "Maybe one day, Funke, when I save enough money." The lie felt particularly bitter. She nodded understandingly, but he saw the concern in her eyes. She cared about Daniel Adebayo's future. What would she feel when she discovered Daniel Adebayo didn't even exist? The thought filled him with a cold dread. He was walking a tightrope, and the fall looked terrifyingly long. The tightrope snapped, suddenly, unexpectedly. QuickServe was hit by a massive, crippling cyber attack. It wasn't just a glitch. It was a full-scale assault. The core operating systems, the tracking network, the customer database, everything went dark. Phones started ringing off the hook. Trucks were stranded mid-route. Panic spread like a virus through every level of the company. For Funke and the dispatch team, it was Armageddon. Their screens were blank. They had no way to track drivers, confirm deliveries, or route new orders except through frantic, often futile radio calls and mountains of now useless paper records. The office descended into organized chaos, phones ringing constantly, stressed staff shouting to be heard over the din. In the midst of this meltdown, the worst possible scenario unfolded. A critical, high-priority shipment, temperature-controlled pharmaceuticals for Victory Hospital, QuickServe's largest and most prestigious healthcare client, vanished. It had been logged into the depot that morning, assigned to a specific refrigerated van, but now there was no trace of it. No driver contact, no system record, nothing. The hospital's CEO called David's COO, Mr. Hassan, directly threatening hellfire, lawsuits, and front-page news stories if the life-saving drugs weren't located within the hour. Hassan, his own job likely on the line, arrived at the depot like a force of nature, his face pale with fury and stress. He stormed into the dispatch office, demanding answers. Who was responsible? Where was the shipment? Mr. Aide, the warehouse supervisor, ever the opportunist, immediately saw a chance to deflect any potential blame from his own chaotic department. He stepped forward, pointing a trembling finger directly at Funke, who was desperately trying to reconcile manual logs. "It was her, sir," Aide declared, his voice filled with false righteousness. "Miss Bello, she processed the docket this morning. She must have made a mistake in the confusion. I've told you, sir, she gets flustered under pressure." Funke looked up, her face ashen, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief. "No!" she cried, standing up, the logs scattering. "It wasn't me! The system crashed. We lost contact with the driver. I did everything correctly according to the manual procedure." But Hassan, blind with panic and needing a quick scapegoat, cut her off brutally. "Silence! I don't want excuses. Find that shipment, Miss Bello. Find it now." If those drugs are not located and confirmed within the next 60 minutes, he glanced at his expensive watch. You are fired. Consider this your only warning. He turned and swept out of the office, leaving Funke standing there, trembling, tears welling in her eyes, utterly devastated and unjustly accused in front of all her colleagues. Daniel had witnessed the whole scene, standing frozen near the doorway. He felt a surge of cold fury. Fury at Aid for his cowardly lie, fury at Hassan for his panicked injustice, but mostly fury at himself. This was happening because of his company's failure, his inadequate security protocols. And Funke, the kindest, most diligent person he knew, was about to pay the price. He couldn't let it happen. Not to her. In that instant, the disguise, the secrecy, the potential consequences, none of it mattered anymore. Only Funke mattered. He strode purposefully towards her, ignoring the stunned silence in the office. Funke, he said, his voice low but clear, cutting through her distress. Don't worry, this isn't your fault. I know how to find out what happened to the shipment. She looked up at him, bewildered, tears streaming down her face. You? Daniel? How? What are you talking about? He took a deep breath. This was it. No more hiding. He met her tear-filled gaze directly. Because the system failure affected the deep storage backups in a specific way, he began, then stopped. No more technical jargon, just the truth. Because my name isn't Daniel Adebayo. Her eyes widened. My real name is David Alakia. I'm the CEO of QuickServe. The gasp that went through the small office was audible. Funke stared at him as if he'd suddenly grown horns. Shock, disbelief, confusion warred on her face. CEO? She whispered, shaking her head. No, you lift boxes. We ate lunch. You're Daniel. I was Daniel, David corrected gently, his heart aching at the pain dawning in her eyes. I came undercover weeks ago. I was looking for something real, and I found it, talking to you. Everything I felt was real, Funke. But I lied about who I was. I was wrong. I was afraid. The shock on Funke's face slowly morphed into a look of deep, profound betrayal. The tears now flowed from hurt, not fear. Afraid? She choked out, her voice thick with emotion. Or were you just amusing yourself? Playing games with the poor workers? Was I just research material for the big boss? No, Funke, please, never, David insisted, taking a step towards her. Don't, she cried, recoiling as if struck. Don't come near me. How could you? I trusted you. I told you things. Their raw, personal drama was interrupted by Mr. Aid, who bustled back in, clearly enjoying the situation. Well, Miss Bello, he sneered, ignoring David. Time's up. Have you found the magic medicine, or shall I call security to escort you out? David turned on Aid, and the full force of his authority hit the supervisor like a physical blow. The humble Daniel was gone, replaced by the commanding presence of the CEO. Mr. Aid, David's voice was dangerously quiet, cold as steel. The failure was a system breach, not employee error, and I know precisely how to access the emergency logs. You will escort me to the central server room. Now and then you will wait outside while I retrieve the data. Aid's jaw dropped. He stared from David's authoritative face to his rough clothes, utterly confused and terrified. Server room? Who? Who are you to give orders? I am David Alakija. CEO, David repeated, his eyes boring into Aid's. My server room, now, or your termination will be the least of your problems. Aid visibly shrank, fumbling for his access card, suddenly understanding he was facing something far beyond a disobedient worker. He nodded mutely, his face pale. David turned back to Funke one last time. Her face was a mask of pain and confusion. Funke, he pleaded softly, let me fix the immediate problem. Let me save your job. Please. We will talk after this is over. I promise. She didn't respond, just wrapped her arms around herself as if holding herself together. With a heavy heart, David turned and followed the trembling Mr. Aid out of the office, towards the heart of the company's technology, leaving Funke alone in the wreckage of her shattered trust. Inside the humming, chilled server room, David was instantly in command. He brushed aside the bewildered Mr. Aid and sat down at the emergency console. His fingers flew across the keyboard, entering complex commands, navigating firewalls, accessing encrypted backup logs stored off-site. He worked with a speed and confidence that left Aid gaping in stunned silence. Within 15 minutes, David had pinpointed the problem. The cyber attack had triggered a rare failsafe error in the refrigerated transport logistics module, automatically rerouting the high-value pharmaceutical shipment to a secure holding unit in a different, smaller depot across town, logging it incorrectly in the process. It wasn't lost, just misplaced by the machine. David used Aid's phone to call COO Hassan directly. "Hassan, it's Alakija." There was a stunned silence on the other end. "The Victory Hospital shipment is secure at the Acacia Depot, holding Unit 4B. System error during the attack. Retrieve it immediately, personally oversee its delivery, and offer our profound apologies to the hospital CEO. Blame the system failure, which is accurate. Do not mention anything else for now. Understood?" Hassan stammered his understanding. David then instructed Hassan to initiate a full cybersecurity audit and system overhaul, effective immediately. He hung up. He turned to the pale, sweating Mr. Aid. "Wait for me outside the dispatch office," he ordered curtly. When David walked back into the main depot area, a hush fell. Workers stopped what they were doing, staring openly now. The whispers had clearly become shouts. The CEO himself, working undercover, revealed in a crisis. He ignored the stares, his only focus on Funke. She was still in the dispatch office, sitting exactly where he had left her, staring blankly at the wall. Mr. Aid stood nervously by the door. "Mr. Aid," David said, his voice calm but final. "Report to the main gate. Security will escort you off the premises. Your employment with QuickServe is terminated, effective now. Your attempt to scapegoat Miss Bello, combined with your history of mismanagement and bullying, makes your position untenable." David gestured to the waiting security guards he had summoned. Aid opened his mouth to protest, saw the look on David's face, and wisely shut it. He allowed himself to be led away, casting a venomous look back at Funke. David dismissed the guards and turned to Funke. The small office felt suffocatingly quiet. He pulled up a chair, sitting opposite her again, the desk between them feeling like a vast chasm. "Funke," he began, his voice filled with remorse. "I know saying sorry isn't enough. What I did was wrong. Deceiving you, betraying your trust. There's no excuse. I can only tell you why I did it, not to justify it, to try and explain." He told her everything then, about the loneliness of his life, the emptiness of his success, the desperate need to find something real, the initial idea of understanding his company, and then meeting her. He explained how her kindness, her integrity, had become the anchor of his undercover life, how he had grown to care for her deeply, and how the fear of losing that connection by revealing the truth had kept him trapped in the lie. Funke listened silently, her expression unreadable now. The earlier tears dried on her cheeks. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time, just looking at her hands clasped in her lap. Finally, she looked up, her eyes searching his face. "So, the man I had lunch with," she said softly, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. "The one who listened to my problems, who made me laugh sometimes, who seemed kind. Was he completely fake? Was any of it real?" "The circumstances were fake, Funke. But the man talking to you wasn't," David insisted earnestly. "The feelings were real. The respect I have for you is real. The way you made me feel, that was the most real thing in my life. Daniel Adebayo was a mask, but the person behind the mask started changing because of you." She looked skeptical. "How can I believe that, David? How can I believe anything you say now? You pretended for weeks. You lied to my face every single day." "You have every reason not to believe me," he acknowledged sadly. "I destroyed your trust. Maybe it can never be rebuilt. I understand that." He took a deep breath. "But I meant what I said about making changes. This experience opened my eyes. Firing Aid is just the beginning. I'm going to overhaul the management structure here, improve conditions, invest in better equipment, listen to the workers. I want QuickServe to be a place where good people like you feel valued and respected. That, at least, is a promise I intend to keep." He paused, his gaze pleading. I know I have no right to ask for anything more, but I hope you won't leave, Funke. The company needs you. He hesitated, then added softly, and I would like the chance someday, maybe, to try and earn back a little bit of your trust, to show you that the changes are real, that I can be real. Funke was silent again for a long time. David waited, his heart pounding, bracing himself for rejection. Finally, she sighed, a deep, weary sound. I don't know, David. My head is spinning. What you did, it's too much to take in right now. She looked at him, her eyes filled with exhaustion and uncertainty. I need time, a lot of time, to think, to figure out everything. Take all the time you need, David said quickly, relief making him feel weak. No pressure, just know that I am truly sorry and that I meant what I said. He stood up, feeling like he should leave her in peace. Would it be okay if I called you, maybe next week, just to see how you are doing? She considered it, then gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. Okay, David, you can call, once, next week. Her voice was still distant, guarded. But that's all I can promise right now. It was the smallest of openings, the faintest glimmer of hope, but it was more than he felt he deserved. Thank you, Funke, he said sincerely. He turned and left the office, leaving her alone with the confusing reality of who he was. As David Alakia walked through the now silent depot, past the staring workers, he knew his life had changed forever. The undercover charade was over. The lonely CEO was gone, replaced by someone who had tasted reality and been humbled by it. He had found something precious, almost lost it through his own deceit, and now faced the monumental task of proving he was worthy of a second chance. Rebuilding Funke's trust, reforming his company, becoming a man of integrity and truth, not just in disguise. The path ahead was steep and uncertain, but for the first time in years, David felt he had something real to fight for. David has revealed his true identity, saved Funke from being unfairly fired, and taken the first steps towards accountability by firing Mr. Auding and promising reforms. Funke, though deeply wounded and distrustful, hasn't completely slammed the door, agreeing to a single phone call. But the path forward is fragile. Can David truly implement the changes needed at Quick Serve while navigating the complexities of his feelings for Funke? Can Funke ever overcome the deep betrayal and learn to trust the man behind the CEO mask? And what will happen when the explosive story of the billionaire CEO's undercover operation inevitably leaks to the Lagos media, putting both their lives under an intense, unwelcome spotlight? Will powerful figures from David's world, jealous rivals, skeptical board members, or perhaps even a calculating former lover, try to sabotage his reforms or drive Funke away? What do you think lies ahead for David and Funke? Should she give him that second chance? Can a relationship born from such a huge deception ever find solid ground? Share your thoughts and predictions in the comments below. If you're invested in their story and want to find out what happens next, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell.